Welcome to Look, Look and Look Again, where we love things retro and programmes all culty and hip, not forgetting films of course as well. Let me take this opportunity to guide you into the realms of TV and celluloid from yesteryear, where it was daring, innovative and progressive, and no snowflake or member of the white middle-class liberal elite interfered in broadcasting in their pious way for the cause and crusade of political correctness. Oh, these days, I hope to cover film and television and share my passion, some knowledge and some facts with you, so it inspires you to look, look and look again. On today's show, it's...
We all want a clean, healthy world to live in, don't we? We're all against pollution in any form, but only when the cost of fighting it is borne by someone else. When our own pockets hit, shitting on the rates, 6 weeks on the dole, a capital investment which makes a company merely viable, then no thanks, let's forget it. Well, I'm warning you. Forget it, and you're dead. Not just this community, but the whole of industrial civilization. The way we're carrying on, the way we're polluting, overcrowding, chemicals, noise. We've got 30 years. 30 years of dirty, slow, dirty dying.
Ecological disaster abounds, test tube ethics, urban neurosis, euthanasia, mutant viruses, industrial espionage, government corruption, overcrowding, Big Brother intrusions and the flooding of London. This is not a resume of the week's news in our look-over-your-shoulder society we have inherited. These are instances and insights into a long-forgotten BBC television series called Doomwatch, which ran from 1970 to 1972. Doomwatch regularly drew in 12 million viewers, was regularly praised by the daily tabloids, and for its time made one episode so controversial it had to be pulled from the schedules. Mondo made its way into this particular episode and with audacious boldness showed a real-life military execution to hammer home its point. This did not result in getting the episode banned, contrary to popular belief, but it did help. More on that episode later. With the current trend on environmental dread, fueled by the media, and quite rightly so, now is the perfect time, in my opinion, to think seriously about making a programme of this ilk again. Doomwatch was the first green programme and covered topics such as immigration and overcrowding, so more relevant now than at the time the series was probably first shown. One episode was titled The Human Time Bomb and explored the devastating effects of living on top of each other as the occupants of a block of flats were unknowingly going mad by urban neurosis. Such effects could still be applied to what we are experiencing in the now, as overcrowding and urban incarceration could potentially make a human pressure cooker blow. How relevant is Doomwatch today? I say very relevant.
Case. Oh, Christ.
Who the hell do you think you're pushing?
Bloody cheek.
Like most early 70s television programmes, some of the scripts are a bit wordy and verbose, but due to the calibre of writing, makes for compulsive and intense experiences by the time you have adjusted to that format. Irrespective of its miniskirts, flowery cravats and stereotypes, Doomwatch holds up amazingly fine and is a true classic of British television. Doomwatch deserves that rare stamp of being totally ahead of its time, relying on science fact rather than science fiction. Doomwatch was broadcast initially on the 9th of February 1970 on BBC One. It filled the prime time 9:20 p.m. to 10 p.m. adult drama slot. It can clearly be seen why. Doomwatch is uncannily prophetic, and after watching all available source material, it always manages to prick the conscience that we aren't doing enough to protect what we need to survive. The series also didn't shy away from the odd chemical burn or genetic horror visually. In the first episode, within 50 minutes, the audience were exposed to a mutant bacterium that eats plastic. In an age where this relatively new material reigns supreme, we only now understand the problematic environmental aspect of biodegradability mentioned in our modern world all too often. Sticking to its other objectivity of technology gone too far, we have a potential solution, but due to bureaucratic obstinacy and utter carelessness, this has resulted in one plane crash, and to the main protagonist's horror will result in another. What works extremely well in this episode is the startling melt of the everyday objects we always take for granted in our society now, for these are objects that we see every day, made of plastic, and in this episode some of them are reduced to a runny goo. Doomwatch continued to fulfill its morbid promise of jarring the viewer a bit and succeeds. I feel shock is too strong a word and would be more appropriate if writing this in the 1970s. Although some of the guilt has rubbed off due to time, several episodes still maintain their potency, and a couple of images remain in the brain long after the credits have faded. Sunday roast, anyone? In 1966, Dr. Kit Pedler and scientist Jerry Davis immortalised a sci-fi Frankenstein for the definitive science fiction series Doctor Who. They were responsible for the 4-part regeneration story titled The 10th Planet, which saw, a la Thing from Another World, a group of scientists fending off menacing aliens in the isolated wastes of the Arctic. The aliens were the Cybermen. The horror not lies solely in the iconic design, which has maintained a high standard, despite their outings being a bit hit and miss. It lays with the unsavoury fusing of organic matter and the technological superiority. This nightmarish vision of science successfully impacted with the audience and made the creators' names ingrained with Doctor Who fans, as well as Terry Nation et al., and we know which creature Terry Nation created, so already the style and representation of Pedler and Davis's visions were delighting a thrilled audience. Eventually they were offered the chance of creating a new drama for adults with a science fiction slant, as this would prove to be less constructive as adult in nature in what could be discussed and shown compared to Doctor Who. Work began on a new series. hence the creation of Doomwatch. Mr. Pedler had kept a scrapbook full of cuttings relating to eco-disaster and scientific advancement. This was fundamental for the series' advancement and was used to produce some of the most memorable outings for the department, making things a whole lot credible. Together they created Doomwatch. It stood for the Department of Observation and Measurement of Scientific Work and was a fictitious organisation dealing with environmental threat, whether from our own neglect or from a laboratory somewhere in Wiltshire. Filming began in autumn-winter 1969. The first series was fresh and there had literally been nothing like it before. The birth of colour television in the UK in 1967, check our Ace of Wands first episode out for a little bit of insight into this, meant this new advancement in visuals was used to decent lucidity, just as the early 1970s Doctor Who were. Secondly, the series offered the viewer the teaser before lunging into the alarmist powerful credits. The music is a brass and thunder accompaniment composed by Max Harris, bursting out of the speakers, whilst red-filtered atom bomb explosions are intercut with the words Doom and Watch, until Doomwatch flashes from purple to white on the screen, as we have seen, waking us all up to what is going on right under our noses, or is about to happen if we ignore it at our peril. Thirdly, and most jaw-dropping of all, was the death of one of the best-loved characters at the end of the first season, Mr. Tobias Wren, played by Robert Powell. People were just not used to seeing their heroes snuff it on screen at the time. This further cemented the programme into the decent adult drama niche, and Toby Wren's death, albeit quite sudden for a series, caused important momentum that still echoed well into the third season and left the gateway for Dr. Quist's romance with his psychiatrist, while she counselled him over Tobias's death, amongst other things, and the breakdown in the relationship between Quist and Ridge. Dr. Spencer Quist was the main protagonist, expertly played by John Paul, who stuck out the three-season tenure. Steadfast and determined and perturbed, Quist lived in the shadow of guilt, as we learn he was responsible for the first atom bomb. He is also haunted by the memory of his wife Helena and her death from leukemia. Both these tragedies are the impetus for Quist's battle with authority and his ongoing crusade against those that are turning the planet into an over-brimming bedpan. He was joined by Dr. John Ridge, the dashing womanizer, full of 70s machismo, but he too had issues until finally in the third season he attempts to hold the world to ransom for their eco-crimes with files of anthrax. Although arrogant, Ridge underneath it all is as vulnerable as most, with the interesting and unpredictable habit of going off at tangents, which, played with conviction by Simon Oates, triumphs alongside the character's fascinating instability. Colin Bradley, I say it that because he was from Yorkshire, was a third member of Doomwatch and provided expertise on the department's computer reports and statistics. Fortunately, this character wasn't left to tinker in the background and had some interesting escapades of his own, especially as the season progresses and we get to the end of season 2 and predominantly in season 3. One is a chilling and very talky episode featuring Colin Bradley called The Inquest, which involves rabies and the call to destroy all dogs and cats within a 5-mile radius. Quite topical and riveting. Tobias Wren was the fourth personnel. Fresh-faced and dedicated to the cause, Wren fitted into the mix very well indeed. His stay with Doomwatch was a short one, as an attempt to defuse a bomb goes horribly wrong off a pier in Brighton, and consequently he ends in bits. Pat Honeysett provided the dolly bird appeal, but as with Colin Bradley's character, was given a bit of limelight in some of the episodes, and nearly had a brush with the Reaper in the story The Devil's Sweets. Doomwatch not only caused a stir in the ratings, but nationwide politically. The Daily Mirror set up its own Doomwatch department intent on challenging the threat of environmental disasters at the time. In the government at the time, motions were put forward to set up a similar department, life imitating art there. Jerry Davis was asked to be part of the group. Alas, it didn't surface, but I ask how many times you recall a television programme inspiring such. Not many times, I think you agree. The series developed further, but it is argued that the series became too soap opera by its third season, concentrating on the home lives of the characters and, of course, affairs of the heart. Terence Dudley, the producer, defended this, saying that the environmental pollutants and potential disasters are still at the fore. The third season did feature episodes that covered flood, immigration, pesticides, lead poisoning, but then tried to diversify with more fantastical, audience-grabbing elements such as killer dolphins, not as B-movie as it sounds, and a lipstick that acts as a contraceptive as well as an aphrodisiac. Unfortunately, we may never be able to judge the content of the third season with limited access to any of the episodes, although script reprints and synopsises are available. No screenshots and soundtracks actually exist for these missing stories. The difficulty with Doomwatch is there seems to be decent research for the first two seasons, and then midway through season 2 it kind of fades into obscurity. As you would have deduced, a part of the first season and nearly all of season 3 has been deleted from the archives. Well done, BBC. I only wish attention to this was in as much effort as Doctor Who. Doomwatch is a pertinent unsung hero of British science fiction that deserves a remake and a reappraisal. Why this isn't due to commence production for us to view in the near future is totally baffling. I implore these stuffy corporate media bigwigs to look at your past to inspire the present and look at Doomwatch for something that could be produced now for our viewers, especially in these times. Doomwatch was more than a representation of the golden age of television. It was practically the crown jewels. If you have any further information about some of these missing episodes and some memories, we would rely on you heavily. Please make some comments in the comments below. If you have any source material to plug in any of the season 1 and season 3 gaps, I would love to hear from you and for you to share that with us.
Quist Spencer, age 50, male physicist, nuclear, research record, file AA9, personal habits.
I'm not concerned with these details. I need to know the conclusions.
Go on to file 484.
Personality type, picnic, aggression factor, 1.9, relationship factor, high, leadership potential, A1+, file store, AA9, indicates, regular, security surveillance, necessity.
Now, Dr. Ridge.
Dr. Ridge.
Ridge, John Paul. Age 38, male, employee, department AX, stroke 4, positive, vetting, indicates moderate security risk, file store AA0, indicates intermittent, surveillance necessity.
Stop. Next.
Just one moment,
Yes.
sir. How vital is this?
Extremely. It could mean disbanding the present Doomwatch team.
Surely only the minister himself can authorize that. Why this urgency?
Their current investigation into Project Sahara. Next.
Mr. Wren.
Wren, Tobias Henry, age 26, male.
So to sum it up, the regular cast for season 1 was John Paul, who played Dr. Spencer Quist, Simon Oates, Dr. John Ridge, Robert Powell played Tobias Wren, Joby Blanchard played Gollum Bradley, Wendy Hall played Pat Honeysett. Semi-regular appearances were made by a character called the Minister, played by John Barron. He epitomised the bumbling public school types who governed in England at the time, and to be perfectly honest with you, in the United Kingdom, the public school types who govern England now. This was Quist's foil, but an amicable one at times. Some superb showdowns appear between the Doomwatch team and this character throughout the 3 main seasons. Looking at the actual episodes itself, as I said, they were broadcast from the 9th of February 1970 to the 11th of May and featured in the 9:20 to 10:10 slot. The first story was called The Plastic Eaters by Kit Pedler and Jerry Davis, that dealt with a mutant virus that eats plastic, a classic episode. Plastic, fantastic indeed. The second story, Friday's Child, which was written by Harry Green, was rather grim in tone and dealt with the ethics of creating a living embryonic fetus whose sole purpose is for organ harvesting. Sounds fascinating, and covered the ethics surrounding this, now sadly wiped from the archives. Burial at Sea followed that by Dennis Spooner, which saw a rock group aboard a ship succumbing to the dangers of chemical drums being dumped at sea, also sadly wiped from the archives. Thanks for that, BBC. The next episode was Tomorrow the Rat, which saw a race of genetically engineered super rats which run amok and attack society, and features a rather gruesome denouement for their creator, consequently tearing her to shreds. Project Sahara by Jerry Davis followed this, with additional material by N.J. Crisp, which was about a wildlife destroying spray and also computer privacy invasion. That was followed by Re-Entry Forbidden by Don Shaw, which was to do with weightlessness that induces paranoia and nuclear devastation. It's very thought-provoking, this story, with a very downbeat ending. The Devil's Sweets by Don Shaw again followed that, which dealt with the world of subliminal advertising. Yes, this is the episode, The Devil's Sweets, where we nearly see poor Pat Honeysett die as she's given an overdose of these receptor-controlling drugs. And combined with the subliminal advertising, it's all about the advertising of tobacco to get people to buy a certain brand of cigarettes, and features a really nasty piece of work, a villain who definitely puts profit before people. After the Devil's Sweets were consumed, we then had a look at The Red Sky by Kit Pedler and Jerry Davis, which dealt with sonic sound and hazardous levels of noise resulting in death. This was set in the claustrophobic confines of a lighthouse and sees poor Dr. Quist nearly tripping out completely. There's some amazing visuals with that, and it's called The Red Sky because the noise of these experimental aircraft that the military are sending over is so high frequency, it's causing the blood vessels in the eyes to pop, therefore producing the red sky. After that, it was The Spectre at the Feast by Terence Dudley, which dealt with food poisoning, hallucinatory toxic-induced vision, and a bit of political sabotage as well. No episodes of this exist, which is a shame, because in this, Dr. Ridge actually sees Pat Honeysett transform into a gorgon, etc., and gets attacked by a savage from behind the sofa. So such things like that, which we would be in awe at, if not they were probably quite funny due to the effects, etc. We won't be able to see that again, because, as I said, Spectre at the Feast by Terence Dudley was completely wiped. Another triumph there from the BBC. Train and Detrain, followed by Don Shaw, which is about mass deforestation in Somerset, and the American detraining program that people have to endure, and the consequences of the psychological damage that's caused by this. Provided horrible glimpses into pesticide effect that was big at the time. The Battery People followed, which was about the effects of chemicals on virility, hormones and their genetic effects and damages, and also focus on a serum that destroys the bones in fish. This was another superb piece of drama as the progression devastates a small Welsh community and the consequences of that. Hear No Evil by Jerry Davis was about manipulating the private lives of employees by bugging them and then using what was heard from bugging them to manipulate the actual employees. Unfortunately, this is wiped, and in society that we are living in now, this is shame, because I believe that this would be quite pertinent, even though it was broadcast on the 4th of May 1970. We'll never get to see that either, because that's wiped. Survival Code by Kit Pedler and Jerry Davis ended season 1, which is about the nuclear weapon negligence and the potential devastation caused by it when the Doomwatch team are called to Brighton to defuse a nuclear bomb, and alas, poor Toby Wren goes up in smoke. This was Robert Powell's last appearance as Tobias Wren and Wendy Hall's character Pat Honeysett. Fortunately, a reprisal can be seen in the first story of season 2, so we get the gist on how this story would have ended.
There's another wire! Don't pull it, you'll get a short. Follow it back to the terminal. What? Don't pull it. Follow it back to the terminal.
You know, I think he's done it. Non-nuclear.
Right. Who'll tell Toby?
When will you people learn not to interfere?
Poor Toby, blown up in his prime. So Survival Code was the last story of season 1 of Doomwatch, and this leaves me now to wrap up this episode, this third episode of Look, Look and Look Again. But fret not, for I shall be back with episode 4, and in that we will be looking at seasons 2 and 3 of Doomwatch, and we will also be taking a look at the fantastic BBC documentary The Cult of Doomwatch. So until then, goodbye.